So, you're standing in the pet food aisle. You pick up a bag, flip it over, and look at the ingredient list. You see real chicken right at the top. You think, perfect, done, I'm a great dog parent. You toss it in the cart, feeling pretty good about yourself. I mean, you read the label, you checked the box. But here's the thing that's gonna keep you up at night. You probably didn't actually read the label. You read the marketing. You read what they wanted you to see. And honestly, it's not your fault. Nobody teaches us this stuff. We just assume that if it says healthy or premium, it actually means something. But the pet food industry, it's basically the Wild West. They got legal loopholes so big, you could drive a truck through them. All right, let's start with the biggest lie in the book, the first ingredient. This is the one everyone hangs their hat on. You've been told 1,000 times, make sure meat is the first ingredient, right? It's like the golden rule of dog food shopping. You flip the bag, you see deboned chicken or fresh beef sitting right there at number 1, and you think, yes, this food is mostly meat. Sorry to burst your bubble, but nah, not even close. Here's the trick. Ingredients on a pet food label are listed by weight, right? That's true. But, and this is a massive but, they're listed by their weight before the food is cooked, before it's processed, before it's turned into those dry little nuggets. Think about a raw chicken breast. What is it really? It's like 70% water. It's heavy because it's wet, it's juicy. But when you make kibble, you gotta cook all that water out. You have to extrude it. By the time that fresh chicken is turned into dry dog food, it loses nearly all that water weight. It shrinks. It turns into a little tiny piece of jerky. So, that big, heavy piece of chicken that was sitting at the top of the list, once the moisture is gone, it might actually weigh less than the corn or the rice or the peas that are further down the list. If they weighed the ingredients after cooking, that chicken might drop from spot number 1 all the way down to spot number 5 or 6. It's a total illusion. They know this. They count on the water weight to bump the meat up the list so you feel good about buying it. It's like weighing a wet sponge versus a dry sponge. The wet sponge is heavier, sure, but it's not more sponge, it's just wet. So when you see chicken first, don't start celebrating yet. You gotta look at what comes next. Because if the next 3 ingredients are dry grains or starches, your dog is basically eating expensive cereal. Okay, so if the first ingredient thing wasn't sneaky enough, let me introduce you to my personal favorite magic trick. It's called ingredient splitting. This is how companies hide the fact that their food is mostly filler without technically breaking any rules. It's genius. Honestly, evil, but genius. Remember how I said ingredients are listed by weight? The heaviest stuff has to go first. Well, let's say a company wants to make a cheap food that's mostly corn, but they know you won't buy it if corn is the first ingredient. You want meat, right? So they have a problem. The corn weighs more than the meat. So what do? Do they add more meat? No, that's expensive. Instead, they break the corn up. They split it into different types of corn. They'll take that big pile of corn and divide it into corn gluten meal, ground yellow corn, and corn flour. Now, instead of one giant heavy pile of corn that would sit at the top of the list, they have 3 smaller, lighter piles. And because each of those little piles weighs less on its own, they fall further down the list. Suddenly, the meat, which hasn't changed amount at all, floats to the top. So the label looks like this: chicken, corn gluten meal, ground yellow corn, corn flour. You see chicken first and think, awesome, mostly chicken. But if you grabbed a calculator and added up all those corn piles, the corn would crush the chicken. It would be like a landslide. It's a shell game. They're just moving the peas around under the cups. It's the same amount of cheap filler, just dressed up in different names so it doesn't look so intimidating. And they do this with everything: peas, potatoes, rice. You'll see peas, pea protein, pea starch, pea flour. It's all just peas. But by splitting it up, they make the meat look like the star of the show when it's really just a guest appearance. It's manipulative, it's shady, and it happens on almost every bag in the grocery store. Now we gotta talk numbers. The guaranteed analysis box on the back. It's that little chart that says stuff like crude protein, 25%, or crude fat, 15%. People look at this and think they're getting hard data. Oh, 30% protein? That's gotta be better than the bag with 20% protein, right? Well, maybe, but probably not. See, the word crude there is important. It doesn't mean unrefined or gross. In the lab, crude protein just measures the amount of nitrogen in the food. That's it. It's a chemical test. It doesn't tell you where that nitrogen came from. Here's a gross example, but stick with me. I could take a pair of old leather work boots, grind them up into a powder, mix in some motor oil, and send it to a lab. And you know what? It would test high for crude protein and crude fat. The leather is technically protein. The oil is technically fat. But if your dog eats that, he's going to get sick. He can't digest leather boots. It has zero nutritional value. But on the guaranteed analysis label, it looks fantastic. It looks like a high-performance meal. That number tells you quantity, not quality. It doesn't tell you if the fat is healthy omega-3s or used restaurant grease. It's just a number. And here's the other kicker. That percentage is based on the food as is, including the moisture. So you can't even compare a bag of dry food to a can of wet food just by looking at the numbers, because the water messes up the math. You need a degree in calculus just to figure out what's actually in the bowl. So when you see 30% protein, don't just nod and smile. Ask yourself, 30% of what? Is it bioavailable? Can my dog's stomach actually use it? Or is it just a number on a spreadsheet designed to make me buy the bag? The guaranteed analysis is a starting point, sure, but it's definitely not the finish line. All right, we need to talk about wording. Words matter. In the real world, dinner, platter, entree, and flavor sound like just nice descriptions, right? Like, oh, a beef dinner, that sounds lovely for Mr. Scruffles. But in the dog food regulatory world, those words are legal definitions. They are strict codes. And if you don't know the code, you are getting played. Let's look at flavor first. This is the biggest scam on the shelf. If you see a bag that says beef flavor dog food, you probably assume there's, a decent amount of beef in there, maybe a steak or two. Nope, not even close. Under the rules, for a company to use the word flavor on the bag, they don't even need real meat. They just need a detectable amount of beefiness. That's it. A detectable amount basically means a dog has to be able to smell it or taste it. We are talking trace amounts. We are talking about a whisper of beef. A ghost of a cow passed by the factory, waved hello, and kept walking. That is beef flavor. It could be beef fat, beef broth, or just a chemical flavoring that mimics beef. There is absolutely no requirement for actual muscle meat in a flavor product. So if you're buying something because it says great bacon flavor, just know you are buying corn and wheat that's been spray painted with bacon perfume. Now compare that to dinner, or entree, or nuggets, or formula. These are the 25% words. If a bag says chicken dinner, the law says the product only has to be 25% chicken, and that's before cooking. Remember the water weight thing? Yeah. So you start with 25% wet chicken, you cook it down, and you're left with very little actual meat in the final kibble. But legally, they can slap chicken dinner on the front in massive letters. It is mind-blowing when you think about it. You see beef dinner and think steak. The manufacturer sees beef dinner and thinks 1/4 beef, 3/4 filler. It's a completely different language, and they are counting on the fact that you don't speak it. They use these appetizing words to make you think the food is hearty and meaty, when really the definitions allow them to skimp on the good stuff. It's not illegal, it's just tricky. And if you don't know the difference between a flavor and a dinner, you're shopping blind. Okay, so we touched on dinner and flavor, but let's really break down the math here. This is what experts call the percentage rules, but I call it the name game. The specific words on the package tell you exactly how much meat is required to be in that bag. It's a sliding scale, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. First, you got the 95% rule. This is the gold standard. If a can just says beef dog food, just those words, no dinner, no entree, no with, then it must be at least 95% beef, excluding water. That is a lot of meat. That is what you think you're buying most of the time. But go check your kibble bag. I bet you anything it doesn't say beef dog food. It probably has a qualifier word. That brings us back to the 25% rule. This is the danger zone. Beef dinner, beef platter, beef entree, beef formula, all these fancy words mean the meat only has to be 25% of the total weight. Think about that. 75% of that bag is not the named ingredient. If you bought a pepperoni pizza and it only had one slice of pepperoni on it, you'd be mad, right? But with beef entree, that's basically what you're getting. A whole lot of crust and cheese, and just enough meat to legally use the name. Then we have the sneaky little 3% rule. This is the with rule. Watch out for this one. If a bag says dog food with chicken, that little word with changes everything. It drops the requirement from 95% all the way down to 3%. 3%. That is a garnish. That is a joke. You could have a bag of sawdust, sprinkle 3% chicken on it, and legally call it sawdust with chicken. Okay, don't feed your dog sawdust, but you get my point. So when you see premium dog kibble with real salmon, don't get excited. That salmon is barely there. It's a marketing prop. It's there so they can put a picture of a pink fish on the bag. And don't even get me started on the flavor rule again. That's less than 3%. That's basically 0%. You have to act like a lawyer when you read these names. Beef versus beef dinner versus with beef. Those aren't just style choices. They represent massive differences in the actual nutritional value of the food. You could be paying top dollar for a with beef product that has almost no beef in it, just because the bag looked fancy. Don't fall for the name game. Read the words. Do the math. Here is a hack that will change your life. Seriously, if you take one thing away from this video, let it be this. It's called the salt divider. When you look at that long, confusing list of ingredients on the back, all the vitamins, minerals, weird chemical names, your eyes glaze over, right? It's too much. You just scan the top few and give up. But there is a landmark hidden in that list, a line in the sand. And that landmark is salt, or sometimes it's listed as sodium chloride. Here is why this matters. A dog cannot eat a lot of salt. It's bad for them. Just like us, too much sodium is dangerous. So, pet food regulators and nutritionists have a general rule. Dog food basically never contains more than 1% salt. Usually, it's even less, like 0.5%. Why do you care? Because remember, ingredients are listed by weight. So, if salt makes up about 1% of the bag, that means everything listed after salt makes up less than 1% of the bag. This is where the companies get busted. You know how they advertise made with real blueberries, spinach, and kale, and they show pictures of fresh salads and smoothies on the front of the bag? You think, wow, superfoods, my dog is gonna be so healthy. Go find the salt on the label. I guarantee you, 9 times out of 10, the blueberries, the kale, the spinach, the carrots, they are listed after the salt. Do you know what that means? It means there is less blueberry in that bag than there is salt. Think about how little salt is on a French fry. Now imagine less blueberry than that. It is a fairy dusting. It is a single blueberry sneeze in a 50-pound bag. It's not there for nutrition. Your dog isn't getting antioxidants from 0.01% kale. It's there for you. It's there so they can write with kale on the package and charge you an extra $10. The salt divider cuts through the hype. Anything below that line is basically irrelevant to your dog's nutrition. It's trace amounts, it's vitamin packs, and marketing gimmicks. If the real chicken is above the salt, great. But if the superfoods are below the salt, ignore them. They are window dressing. They are purely there to make the label look pretty to a human who eats salads. Your dog doesn't care, and honestly, his body won't even notice they're there. Use the salt to filter out the noise. We gotta talk geography for a second. I know, boring, right? But the physical layout of the bag is designed to manipulate you. There are 2 main zones on every bag of dog food, and they play completely different roles. It's like a good cop, bad cop routine. First, you got the principal display panel. That's the PDP. That's the front of the bag, the billboard. This is where the marketing team earns their paycheck. This is where you see the happy dog running through a meadow, the giant font saying ancestral diet, and the pictures of raw steaks and fresh veggies. The PDP is designed to grab your emotions. It's loud, it's colorful, and honestly, it's mostly nonsense. The rules for the front of the bag are loose. I mean, they can't outright lie, but they can stretch the truth until it snaps. They can use unregulated buzzwords, which we'll get to in a minute. They can use imagery that has nothing to do with what's inside. You see a wolf? Your dog is a pug. You see a grilled steak? The food is brown pellets. The front of the bag is the sales pitch. It is the hook. Then you have the information panel. This is usually the back or the side of the bag. This is the boring part with the small text, the ingredient list, the guaranteed analysis, the feeding guide. This is where the lawyers and the regulators live. The information panel is the confession booth. The front of the bag screams real meat. The back of the bag whispers, and also a lot of corn and soy. The front says natural. The back lists red dye 40. The trick is most people buy based on the PDP. They look at the front, they like the vibe, they buy it. Companies spend millions designing that front panel to trigger your buying impulse. They want you to feel like a good parent. But smart dog owners, you guys, you should barely even look at the front. Pretend the front doesn't exist. Pick up the bag and immediately flip it over. The truth lives in the fine print on the information panel. That is where the legal definitions kick in. That is where the name game rules apply. That is where the salt divider works. If the front says dinner with beef, the back will reveal exactly where beef falls on the list. Don't let the pretty pictures distract you. The principal display panel is for your heart. The information panel is for your brain. And when it comes to your dog's health, you gotta think with your brain, not your feelings. So stop looking at the wolf and start looking at the text box. You walk down the aisle and it feels like you're in a health food store for yoga instructors. Everything says holistic, premium, natural, gourmet. It sounds fancy. It sounds expensive. But guess what? Most of those words are total nonsense. They are basically decoration. Let's start with holistic. This word is everywhere. It conjures up images of a whole body wellness retreat for your golden retriever. But legally, it means absolutely nothing. Zero. Zip. There is no legal definition for holistic in the pet food world. I could go to my backyard, bag up some dirt and old leaves, and legally sell it as holistic dirt. The FDA wouldn't blink. It is purely a marketing term designed to make you feel warm and fuzzy. It suggests the food considers the whole dog, but there is no test, no standard, and no rule enforcing it. You are paying extra for a vibe. Now, natural. This one actually has a definition. It means the food doesn't contain chemically synthesized ingredients, artificial flavors, or artificial colors. That's good, right? Sure. But it doesn't say anything about the quality of the ingredients. You can have natural bone meal and natural lard. Arsenic is natural. Poison ivy is natural. Just because it's natural doesn't mean it's nutritious or safe. It just means it wasn't made in a test tube. It's a low bar, honestly. Then we get to the big one, human grade. This is the only one that really carries weight. If a bag says human grade, it means every single ingredient is safe for people to eat. And this is the kicker. It was manufactured in a facility that is inspected and approved for human food production. That is huge. Most pet food is made in rendering plants that would get shut down if they tried to make a sandwich for a human. Human grade is the gold standard for safety and quality control. But be careful. You'll see made with human grade ingredients. That is a trick. If they take a human grade chicken but process it in a pet food factory that makes rat poison next door, it is no longer human grade. It's a very strict label, and very few foods actually qualify. Don't let the holistic noise distract you from the real standards. Okay, don't freak out. I'm gonna say a dirty word. By-products. I can see you cringing. We have been trained to think byproduct equals trash. You imagine sweepings from the slaughterhouse floor. Feathers, hooves, beaks, maybe a little sawdust. You think it's the stuff they couldn't sell to the hot dog factory. Marketing campaigns have spent millions convincing you that real meat is good and byproducts are evil. You'll see bags proudly shouting, "No byproducts," like it's a badge of honor. But here is the truth that's gonna blow your mind. Byproducts are actually some of the most nutritious parts of the animal. In the wild, when a wolf takes down a deer, what does he eat first? He doesn't go for the muscle meat. He doesn't ask for a filet mignon. He eats the liver, the kidneys, the spleen, the heart. Why? Because that is where the vitamins are. That's nature's multivitamin. Muscle meat, the real chicken you want to see on the label, is mostly just protein and water. It's great, but it's nutrient-light compared to a liver. In pet food terms, meat byproducts usually refers to these organ meats. It's the clean parts of the animal that humans just culturally don't like to eat. We don't like kidney pie as much as we used to, so it goes to the dogs, and that is a good thing. Now, is there low-quality byproduct? Sure. You don't want poultry byproducts that are vague and sourced from mystery animals. But chicken byproduct meal can actually be more nutritious than just chicken breast. It has calcium from bone, vitamin A from the liver, and iron from the spleen. The companies that scream no byproducts are playing on your human squeamishness. They are selling you a human diet for a dog. But dogs aren't humans. They are scavengers and predators. They thrive on the weird bits. So don't automatically toss a bag just because you see the B word. If it's a named source, like beef byproduct, it might actually be better for your pup. We talked about water weight in the ingredient list, but now we gotta talk about how it messes up the percentages. This is the apples to oranges problem, and it drives me crazy. Let's say you're holding a bag of dry kibble in one hand and a can of wet food in the other. You look at the guaranteed analysis. The kibble says 30% protein. The can says 10% protein. You think, wow, the kibble is way better. It has 3 times the protein. Wrong. You just fell for the water weight distortion. See, the kibble is dry. It's like jerky. It has almost no water in it, maybe 10%, so everything is concentrated. The can? It's 75% to 80% water. It's a soup. The protein is diluted by all that moisture. To actually compare them, you have to do some math. You have to remove the water from the equation. This is called converting to dry matter basis. We will get into the specific math later, but conceptually, you need to understand this. If you took all the water out of that can, that 10% protein would probably jump up to like 40 or 50%. It might actually have more meat than the kibble. This is why people think wet food is just a treat or not enough food. They look at the label and see low numbers. But your dog's body doesn't care about the water. It absorbs the nutrients. The label makes wet food look weak and kibble look like a powerhouse simply because of physics. It gets even worse when you compare fresh food or raw food. Those are super wet too. So you might pay $100 for a bag of fresh food that says 12% protein and feel ripped off compared to the $20 bag of kibble that says 25%. But you are comparing a grape to a raisin. The raisin is just a dried up grape. It's the same stuff, just shrunk. You have to stop looking at the percentages on the bag at face value. Unless the moisture levels are exactly the same, those numbers are lying to you. You gotta learn to past the water to see the real food. So, a few years ago, the whole dog world decided grains were the enemy. Marketing told us wolves don't eat cornfields, and we all nodded and said, yeah, my poodle is a wolf, no more grains. Everyone switched to grain-free. We thought we were doing the best thing ever. We swapped the corn and rice for lentils, peas, chickpeas, and potatoes. Then the reports started coming in. Dogs were dropping dead from heart failure, specifically a condition called DCM, dilated cardiomyopathy. And the scary part? It wasn't just old dogs, it was young, healthy dogs. Breeds that never get heart problems were suddenly getting sick. The FDA jumped in and found a weird link. A huge chunk of these dogs were eating grain-free diets. But here is the nuance that people miss. It wasn't necessarily that the lack of grains was killing them. It was what they replaced the grains with. See, to make a kibble stick together, you need starch. If you take out the wheat and corn, you gotta put something else in. So they loaded these foods up with legumes, peas, lentils, chickpeas, huge amounts of them. Remember ingredient splitting? Yeah, lots of pea protein and pea starch. It turns out these high levels of legumes might be blocking the dog's ability to absorb taurine, an amino acid that is critical for heart health. Or maybe it's the legumes themselves. We still don't know the exact mechanism, but the correlation was terrifying. The tragic irony is that owners were trying to buy the healthiest, expensive food, and they ended up hurting their dogs. They were reading the label, seeing grain-free, and thinking premium. They didn't realize they were part of a massive nutritional experiment. Just because a label says no corn doesn't mean it's good. You have to look at what they used instead. If the first 5 ingredients are 3 different kinds of lentils, that is a red flag. We traded a known filler, corn, for an unknown risk, legumes, all because of marketing. It's a harsh lesson, but it proves you can't just follow the trends. You gotta look at the science. Okay, class is in session. I know, you didn't come here for a math lesson. You came here to learn how to feed your dog. But listen, if you don't understand dry matter basis, or DMB, you are literally guessing. You are gambling with your dog's nutrition. We talked earlier about how water messes up the percentages on the label. The guaranteed analysis gives you the numbers as fed, meaning including all the water. But since a can is 78% water and Kibble is 10% water, comparing them as fed is useless. It's like comparing the sugar in a grape to the sugar in a box of raisins. The grape looks like it has less sugar, but only because it's full of water. You have to dry them both out to see the truth. So here is how you do it. You don't need a PhD, you just need a phone calculator. First, look at the moisture percentage on the label. Let's say you have a can of stew and the moisture is 75%. That means 25% of that can is actual stuff, actual food. That 25% is your dry matter. Now look at the protein. The label says 10%. You take that 10% and you divide it by the dry matter number, which is 25%. So 10 divided by 25 is 0.4, or 40%. Boom! That weak-looking can of food is actually 40% protein. That is huge. That is higher than almost any kibble on the market. Most kibbles sit around 25% or 30%. So by doing the math, you realize the wet food is actually a protein powerhouse, and the dry food is just dense. You gotta do this for everything: fat, fiber, all of it. If you have a dog that needs a low-fat diet because of pancreatitis, and you look at a can that says 4% fat, you might think, oh, that's safe. But do the DMB math. If the can is 75% water, that 4% fat is actually 16% fat on a dry matter basis. That could send your dog to the hospital. See why this matters? The label numbers are deceptive because of the water. They lull you into a false sense of security. You have to strip the water away to see what you are really feeding. It takes 10 seconds in the grocery aisle, but it changes everything. Stop trusting the as-fed numbers. They are for the regulators, not for you. Live by the DMB, or you're just shopping in the dark. This is one of those things that sounds so convenient, right? All life stages. It sounds like a magic food that works for everyone. You got a puppy? Cool. You got a grandpa dog? Great. You got a weird teenager dog? Perfect. It's the one-size-fits-all of dog food. And we love convenience. Who wants to buy 3 different bags of food? But think about it for a second. Does a human baby eat the same diet as a linebacker? Does a bodybuilder eat the same calories as a retired grandmother? No way. Here is the secret. All life stages is code for puppy food. The rules say that if a food claims to be for all life stages, it has to meet the nutritional requirements of the most demanding life stage. And what is the most demanding stage? A growing puppy or a nursing mother. They need tons of calories, tons of fat, and very specific levels of calcium and phosphorus to build bones. So, when you buy that all life stages bag for your 12-year-old couch potato golden retriever who sleeps 20 hours a day, you are basically feeding him puppy fuel. You are giving him high-calorie, high-fat growth food. And what happens? He gets fat, he gets pancreatitis, his joints start to hurt because he's carrying extra weight. It's not poison, but it's a mismatch. It's like putting jet fuel in a minivan. The minivan doesn't need to go Mach 2, it just needs to get to soccer practice. Companies love all life stages because it simplifies their logistics. They only have to make one formula. They don't have to worry about separate puppy and senior lines. It saves them money, but it might cost you in vet bills down the road. If you have an adult dog, look for a bag that says adult maintenance. That means it's formulated for a dog that is done growing. It has fewer calories and controlled mineral levels. If you have a puppy, get growth. If you have a senior, get senior. Specialized nutrition exists for a reason. Don't fall for the lazy marketing of all life stages, unless you actually have a puppy or a pregnant dog. Your lazy adult dog does not need to bulk up for the winter. He just needs to stay lean and healthy. Don't let convenience trump biology. We touched on the AAFCO statement, that little lawyer text on the back, but now we gotta talk about the actual rules, the recipe book. People assume that because there are requirements, the government is forcing companies to make gourmet meals. They think AAFCO is like a Michelin star judge, tasting the food and making sure it's delicious and healthy. Nope, AAFCO is not a chef. AAFCO is a building inspector. And they aren't checking if the house is a mansion, they are checking if the roof is gonna collapse on your head. Here is the cold, hard truth. The AAFCO nutrient profiles are set to minimums. They determine the absolute lowest amount of a nutrient your dog needs to not get a deficiency disease. It is the survival line. It is not the thriving line. Let's look at the numbers. For an adult dog, the minimum requirement for protein is 18% on a dry matter basis. 18%! That is incredibly low. You could hit 18% protein with a mostly corn-based diet and a tiny sprinkle of meat meal. For fat, the minimum is roughly 5%. That is essentially a low-fat cracker. If you fed your dog a diet that was exactly 18% protein and 5% fat, he wouldn't die, he would survive. But his coat might get dry, his energy might drop, his muscle mass might shrink. It's like if I told you that a human can survive on white bread and multivitamins. Technically, yes, you won't get scurvy, but are you gonna feel good? Are you gonna be an athlete? No way. And for puppies, the bar is a little higher, 22.5% protein and 8.5% fat, but it's still barely scratching the surface of what a carnivore actually wants. Most high-quality foods today blow these numbers out of the water. We see foods with 30%, 35%, even 40% protein. The problem is, a cheap bag of food that meets the bare minimum of 18% gets to slap the same 100% complete and balanced logo on the package as the premium bag with 40% protein. They both passed the test, but one got a D- and the other got an A+. The label makes them look equal. You also gotta watch out for what's not required. There is no requirement for carbohydrates. A company could pack a food with 60% sugar and carbs, and as long as they hit that 18% protein floor, AAFCO says thumbs up. There is no maximum limit for carbs. That is scary. So when you hear meets AAFCO requirements, don't start clapping. That just means this food is legally adequate. It means it's not illegal. That is a very low bar. You want a food that exceeds the requirements, not one that just barely limps over the finish line. Your dog deserves a diet designed for optimal health, not just minimum survival. Look for protein numbers that are well above the floor. Treat the AAFCO numbers as the safety net, not the target. All right, we've been through the ringer. We've busted the first ingredient myth, we've decoded the flavor lies, and we've done the math on the moisture. You probably feel like you can never trust a label again. And honestly, that's a good starting point. Healthy skepticism is your best friend here. But you gotta buy food, right? You can't just boycott the aisle. So let's wrap this up with a game plan. Here is how you are gonna shop from now on. This is your new routine. Step 1. Ignore the front of the bag. Seriously, don't even look at the wolf, don't look at the steak, don't read the words holistic or ancestral. It's all noise. Flip the bag immediately. Step 2. Find the AAFCO statement. Is it complete and balanced? Is it for adult maintenance or all life stages? Make sure it matches your dog's actual age and lifestyle. If it's for intermittent feeding, put it back unless it's a treat. Step 3. Find the salt divider. Scan the ingredient list for salt or sodium chloride. Draw a mental line. Everything below that line is negligible. If the blueberries and kale are below the salt, stop paying extra for them. They aren't doing anything. Step 4. Look at the first 5 ingredients, but look at them with your X-ray vision. If you see chicken at number 1, look for the split ingredients. Do you see peas, pea flour, and pea protein at 2, 3, and 4? If so, realize that this is a pea-based food, not a chicken-based food. That's okay if that's what you want, but don't be fooled. Step 5. Check the manufacturer. Does the bag say manufactured by or manufactured for? Manufactured by means they own the factory. They control the quality. Manufactured for means they hired a third party to make it. That's not always bad, but it means they have less control over safety. You are the only advocate your dog has. He can't read. He can't tell you that the food makes his stomach hurt or that he's feeling lethargic. He just eats what you put in the bowl because he trusts you. So you gotta be the smart one. You gotta be the detective. It takes a little extra time, sure. You might look like a weirdo standing in the aisle with your calculator and your reading glasses, but who cares? Your dog is worth it. Now go forth, read those labels, and don't let the marketing machine win. You got this.